Hello and welcome to the 10th episode of the Extreme Sports Performance podcast. My name is Ryan Blake. I'm the founder and CEO of Extreme Sports Performance. In this episode, I'm going to be speaking to Si Nicholson. Si is a friend who I've known for many years and is currently the GB Paris snowboard coach. In this episode, I'm going to be asking him the questions I ask all my guests: who he is, what he does, where has he come from, what's he done along the way, what are the key moments from his career so far, what are his top areas of interest, what are the most valuable things he's learnt to date, who are his top influences, what are his top resources for information, what are his top 3 sports performance exercises or drills, what are his top 3 pieces of advice in life, exercise and or sport, and finally, where can people find him. We freestyle a little bit between questions all the way through. Really enjoyed recording this one. I hope you enjoy listening to it. Here we go. Si, welcome to the Extreme Sports Performance podcast. Thanks for coming on. Could you just start by telling people who you are and what you do, please?
Of course. Hi, Ryan. Thanks for having me on your show. Si Nicholson. I'm the GB Paris snowboard team coach. I've been working with disabled snowboarders for the last 3.5 years.
And could you just give a brief history of when you started snowboarding and what your kind of journey or pathway has been to lead you to where you are today?
Yeah, of course. Well, a little bit convoluted. So I started snowboarding when I was 12 on a family holiday. So I skied, and my brother, we were on a family holiday. My brother turned around and said, I really want to snowboard. I had no idea what snowboarding was at the time. And so parents go, yeah, absolutely. So we jumped on a couple of snowboards and away we went. And didn't really snowboard a huge amount until I was about 14, 15. And the Tamworth Snowdome in the UK, an indoor snow slope, opened up. And my brother had been snowboarding a little bit by then. So he took me along, and I did a little bit more and got a little bit better. And just really got into it from there. And I was skateboarding at the time as well. So it's very much into the board sports. Anyway, he did a season. I went out followed him and kind of joined him with his friends out in Whistler. And then I was about 16 years old. And then I was about 17. The indoor slope in Milton Keynes opened. And that's where I lived at the time. So it's perfect. So I applied for a job there as a rental technician. Got that. And then I started working there, and then I got a job as slope patrol. So kind of the snowboarding started to grow and started to enjoy it. I was surrounded by a lot of like-minded individuals, a lot of instructors, and it's very much an aspiration of mine at that time to become an instructor. So I figured out a way of doing a gap year after I finished my A-levels. And I went and joined a couple of friends of mine out in Mammoth Mountain, did my first instructor qualification there. And that was great. It was really enjoyable. And from there, I flew to New Zealand and met up with a buddy of mine, Keith. And he and I, we bought this terrible van. We drove around New Zealand, and we stopped off at one of the mountains in the North Island, Mount Ruapehu. And we both decided to do a season in Whakapapa, which is one of the resorts there. And so we taught all season and gained a few more qualifications while I was there. Now, this is my first gap year. I wasn't quite ready to finish my season early. Yeah. And so I made a phone call home and said, Mum, I'm not coming home. I was enjoying myself way too much. So one gap year turned to 2 gap years. And I flew straight to Lake Tahoe and I got a job with Alpine Meadows Resort. So I did another season there. And then so basically just did back-to-back seasons for a little while and really enjoyed it. But it got to that point where I love snowboarding, I love teaching, but the thing about the service industry in this sense is there's not a huge amount of money. It's not financially viable if you want to have the house, if you want to have the car, if you want to have nice things. And at that time, I really wanted to kind of grow and develop myself financially and have these things. And that's what I thought I wanted. So I was like, right, okay, I love what I do, but it's time to go do something real. So I went to Portsmouth University to study mechanical engineering, where I met your good self,
Yep.
and many good times we had there. And so through university, very much snowboarding took more of a social became a social element to my life, and was very much the central social element in my life at university, much to the misfortune of my grades, certainly during the winter months. And it was great. We did a lot of dry slope snowboard racing, and we did a lot of. We went on holidays each winter with the university, and it was great fun. It was just really enjoyable. But there's still that competition element in there with the racing, and I love competition. I've always loved racing of some sort or another. So as a kid, I did a lot of swimming, competitive swimming, and absolutely loved it. Anything competitive, I used to just thrive on it. I was like, okay, I really enjoy this. And interestingly, when I was doing my back-to-back seasons, I got the opportunity to ride in a couple of competitions, snowboard cross races, and I really loved them, and I actually did pretty well on them. So racing, it fed that racing bug that I had, and then finished university, and I was like, well, okay, I love snowboarding, but I'm probably not going to go back to it, and so I need to get a real job now. And I wasn't really sure what kind of real job I wanted to do. I had a mechanical engineering degree, but I really didn't want to get a conventional job. I didn't want to be sat at a desk. I didn't want to be glued to really kind of that remote and sedentary lifestyle that so many people adopt. And that would be the normal career path for a mechanical engineer. So a friend of mine at the time, he was in the army, and he suggested that I join, because you can join as a professional engineer within the army. I didn't know this. So I applied, and got selected to go to Sandhurst, and then ended up joining the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers. So the army apparently snowboards. I didn't know this either. So the army said, "Yep, every year they have the Army Snowboard Championships," and my first posting was to Germany. And from Germany, we did a big exercise over in Canada. And I was in Canada at the time, and we're on the exercise. It was middle of winter. It was -40 outside. It was absolutely freezing. I said to my boss, "Listen, did you know that the Army Snowboard Championships are going on right now?" He's like, "No, I didn't." So, "What is this?" It's like, "Yeah, it sounds like a bit of a holiday." I was like, "It probably is, but no. Snowboard is very, very serious. Can I go and represent myself and represent the unit at the Army Champs?" And he's like, "Well, don't see why not. We've got things covered here." And so basically jumped on a plane and flew halfway across the world again to Austria, to Stubai, and competed in the Army Snowboard Champs. And I did really well. I won it. I was like, okay, well, that's pretty cool. And then they did PGS, Parallel Giant Slalom, and they did freestyle, so jumps and kickers, and they also did border cross. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then off the back of that, I was selected for the Army team to go compete at the Inter-Services. And that's where it's held every year in Maribel. It's where the Navy, Army, and the Air Force compete against each other. So then I got selected for this team. I was like, "Boss," I flew back to Canada. I was like, "Boss, I've been selected for this team. Can I go again?" Because it was a 3-4 month deployment to Canada. And he was like, "Well, you know what? Just make sure you get some work done between now and then, and we'll let you go." So I flew to France and to Maribel and competed with the team, and we did really well. And again, border cross and PGS and freestyle, and it was really exciting. And I kept doing this, and then from the Inter-Services, I was selected to the combined services snowboard team. And as a group, as a collective, Army, Navy, and Air Force, the best from each service would then go to the British Snowboard Championships, which that year was taking place in Largs in Switzerland. So then, off the back of that, we went and competed. We did pretty well, and we entered the border cross, and we did pretty well. And then I got approached by the GB team, border cross team at the time. They said, "Hey, listen, do you fancy come riding for us?" I was like, "I don't know, that's a bit of a stretch." I mean, it's one thing getting a couple of weeks here and there to go and compete, but you're talking about a full-time program. But the interesting thing is that at the time was there was already a couple of service members representing on the GB team. So there was an RAF guy, and there had been a Navy guy as well. I was like, well, okay, if there's been an RAF and a Navy guy, Why can't there be an army person representing? So basically, I said, right, well, if you can give me a letter, I'll take it to my bosses, see what they say. So, to my surprise, they turned around and said, that looks like a great opportunity, Si. Go for it. I'm like, what? Seriously? So yeah, go for it. Go become what we call in the army a tracksuit soldier. And they gave me permission to go represent GB for 6 months each winter. And this was amazing. I was like, I couldn't believe this. And really rare opportunity. But the army is very good at supporting, and the forces on the whole are very good at supporting high-level athletes. We saw it with Kelly Holmes. We saw it with Jen Kehoe at the moment, who's just been awarded an MBE. And they won a gold medal with her visually impaired skier, Menna Fitzpatrick. Pyeongchang, two of the other guides, the services. So the military is very, very good at supporting elite athletes, and have been for a long, long time. So this was not a rarity. It was just a new thing in snowboarding to have somebody go and do a full-time program. So I went and did a few seasons with those guys and competed and got up to just below World Cup, Europa Cup level. And I was competing at it was an incredible level. It was such a giant step up from what I'd been doing. And it was a very, very steep learning curve. And I was certainly a little bit further down a little bit higher up the age bracket than a lot of the people I was competing against. I mean, there was some serious ability. And I did pretty well in my first competition. So qualified 17th and came 21st. And this was amongst some of the best riders in the world. This was quite a big competition at the time. So I was like, okay, all right. So I'm okay at this, pretty good. And so I continued training and continued working and just really thoroughly loved what I did. Just absolutely loved the sport, but very, very aware that it was a very hard mountain to climb, given that I was competing against 16-year-olds who were whipping my butt. And these kids were incredible. But then they'd been snowboarding and racing and that's all they had been doing. So I had to figure this out really, really quickly. So with the mechanical engineer brain on, the analytical kind of thought process going, right, okay, what can I do to shortcut navigate? So I was always trying to think of ways and really, going in deep into the self-analysis piece of how I could perform better. Ultimately, after 3 years and a lot of money, a lot of expense, and the expenses are huge in winter sport. You've not only got the competition entry fees, but you've also got lift passes, you've got accommodation, you've got all the equipment. Is so expensive, and it is incredibly. It's almost like a bottomless pit that you just throw money in the hope that you're going to get better and better and better. I like many other sports, but certainly winter sport specifically, because you can't do it in this country. You do have to travel. It becomes exponentially more expensive. So I kind of looked at I kind of took a step back. I looked at where I'd been, where I was going, where I was at now, and had to make a decision. I was like, right, my career was going well, but only so well as it could do when you're taking 6 months off each winter. My performance was increasing. I was getting better and better, but I had to look at the Olympics and what Olympics I was actually aiming for. What were my realistic goals? And I said, right, okay, big boy decision time. What am I going to do? And for me, it came down to wanting to achieve something in my career. I wanted to achieve that more than I wanted to achieve sporting success. And that decision at the time, it was a very, very difficult decision. I didn't take it lightly. I asked a lot of different people for counsel. And in the end, I said, right, okay, I want to achieve this particular promotion, this final job. And that's what I did. And I went back and I worked really, really hard. And I achieved my career goal. And that was great. But then, I still have this love, this passion for snowboarding. At the time, I was listening to various podcasts, Tim Ferriss stuff, Alan Watts, and Alan Watts, I love him. He's great. He's one of these. This guy turns around and says, if money was no object, what would you do? And and he asked his class this question, and they said, I'd be a sculptor, I'd be a poet, I'd be a musician. And it's like, well, do what you love. Do what you love, because eventually somebody will pay you for it. And with this little kind of this little nugget, this plant, this seed, it got me thinking about what do I love? What do I love doing? Because I was falling out of love with the military at the time. It was almost 10 years in. I was like, well, is there more to life than this? I'd met some incredible people. I'd gone to some incredible places, and I owed the army for so much, for their support, for what they'd been able to do for me, to allow me to go snowboarding and my own personal development. But I didn't feel it was what I wanted to do anymore. So then I was like, right, okay, let's do what we love. What I loved was snowboarding, and I'd already obviously had all the qualifications from before I started university. And so all I needed to do was update those. So that's what I did. I went about getting all my qualifications up to date, and then left, and then decided to become a full-time coach. And this was a real step into the darkness, a real scary moment, because I was going from secure employment, salary, pension. It was a very, very comfortable life, to suddenly self-employed, not knowing where my next paycheck would come from, but I knew it was the right thing to do. I knew it was something that I had to do. And so I did. I jumped ship, and I essentially moved to Manchester. Manchester's been simply Manchester because at the time they had an indoor snow slope there, and I'd made some inroads with those guys, and they were very keen to support snowboard cross in the UK. And I set up a club. And the idea being is that I could use the club to grow my coaching business, as it were. And it was Snow Sport England affiliated, and it became a not-for-profit. And it's this idea of using this club to build a business. Now, over time, this became something very, very different. And actually now, 3.5, 4 years on, the club's still running, and the mandate is very changed. The focus has now changed, and it's all about providing opportunity for 6 to 16-year-olds in ski cross and snowboard cross to learn the skills. And we've got a great community. We've got some great young athletes, and we've got some. It's just grown into something beyond my wildest dreams. But it's something that I do for passion, for love, but for love of the sport, for love of sharing my knowledge. Old saying, knowledge not shared is not knowledge. So that's kind of what became of that. Now, going back a couple of steps, looking back, how I got into the GB stuff. This was a really interesting story, because it was just before I left. It was about 6 months before I left the army. So I left in the April. This is around about November time, and I was out snowboarding, standard, and I was in a bar, as you do, and a couple of my mates said, "Hey, have you heard about these two disabled snowboarders, Ben and Owen? They just started the British para snowboard team. I hear they're looking for a coach." I was like, "Oh, well, that's interesting, because I'm about to leave and do snowboard coaching full time." And it's like, well, that is a coincidence. And so they wanted to meet me. I obviously wanted to meet them, and we met in a bar, of course. And I had a few beers, because those guys really like their beers. And one beer led to 2 beers, led to 5, led to drinking beers out of Owen's prosthetic leg, which was quite an interesting experience. Yeah. And so the biological bond was formed. We got on really well. And from there they said, "Listen, we really want you to coach me, Si. And we're just going to talk to our performance director, a guy called Duncan Freshwater at the time, and we'll see if we can get you on board." So I had a phone call interview with Duncan, and the job application really well. The job interview was to take these guys out to the world champs in La Molina, and to get them racing. And it was the World Championships, so it was a big event. And so went out there and coached these guys, and Duncan was out there as well. And it was great. It went really, really well. And then off the back of that, they offered me the full-time position. And so 3.5 years on, I've now been with the team. I've seen it grow, and we've seen the performance level rise. I've been to the Paralympics with them, and done 2 world champs of them. And we're in a really, really good position right now, and I'm looking forward to the next world champs coming up in Finland. And that's really, that's how we got to where I am here.
That's absolutely fascinating, Si. And obviously, I was aware of some of that, but I wasn't aware of all of that. So just to hear that story is great. Obviously, you've had a lot of successes over that time period. What would you say the main or the top 3 challenges were for you from when you left the army to now in those different kind of capacities?
I think first of all, the first challenge was the fear of the unknown. I mean, it's that leap of faith. When I moved from the army to go full-time coaching, and I don't think I'm alone in this. I think many people go through this, and call it midlife crisis, call it whatever you want. But I think everybody reaches that point where they've been doing what they're doing, and they do a job, and they might not like that job, but they do it anyway because that's what their degree is in, or that's just what their job is at the time. And interestingly, you earn money doing this job that you don't particularly enjoy, don't particularly like, and it gives you a certain quality of life. And you enjoy this quality of life. You live for the weekend. You go to nice holidays. And, you might earn some quite decent money or not. But you do this job in order to sustain this quality of life that you've got for yourself. And you then get a better job, or you get a promotion within this job that you don't particularly like, but you keep on doing because you're paying quite well. And you get a bit more money, and you get very comfortable. It gives you a certain quality of life. You start buying slightly more expensive things, going on slightly more expensive holidays. And then you get another promotion, and your quality of life increases accordingly. And interestingly, you almost get into this trap. And there's various types of traps. It might be that you feel obligated to do a job that you don't particularly enjoy because you've got this quality of life, or it might be that you've got other reasons to do the job, i.e. kids, or you might have the need for a pension, or you might have a lot of debt for whatever reason. But essentially you get into this trap of doing this thing you hate in order to justify and to maintain a certain quality of life. And a lot of people find themselves in this trap, and this is quite normal and probably reflective of most people in society. And I think it takes a huge amount of bravery to just take a leap of faith to say, you know what, I'm going to do what I love. Screw it, let's do it, to steal Richard Branson's words. And that was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in the last few years. Mm-hmm. Second most difficult thing, I've got 2 and 3 lined up. So the second thing, we'll go back a little bit further.
Sure.
We'll go back to the army, because it was the formative time, most formative time of my life. Sandhurst, 12 months at Sandhurst, 44 weeks. For those who've done it, and for those who've been through it, you can either look through rose-tinted glasses, or you can just honestly say that place was absolutely tough. You're awake more hours of your life than you'll ever be again. Mm-hmm. You're working harder physically and mentally than you'll ever do. All the while, you have to learn and put into practice that learning. And it tests absolutely everybody, as it should do. It's preparing you for some pretty unknown eventualities. You might, some exercises you go for 5 days without sleeping, not a wink of sleep, and all the whilst you'll be digging trenches, and you'll be running around playing army and shooting the enemy. And probably the hardest thing I have ever done and will ever do in my life was those 12 months at Sandhurst for me personally.
Yeah.
And that was certainly a lot to thank for that, because it caused a lot of growth in me, a lot of growing up, and it gave me a better perspective. So I'm really thankful that I did do that.
Yeah.
And then in sport specifically, I think one of the things I've learned is probably a lesson that I'm reflecting on now more than anything is a little bit towards linked to self-determination theory, but mental health within sport and the challenge of dealing with people and looking after people who have had some extraordinary experiences in their life, some incredible traumas that have led to a particular type of condition or behavior. And for somebody coming into an environment who is not prepared for this, not educated, to then have to deal or to cope with individuals who have been through this, I think it took a huge amount of time to learn how to deal with the emotions personally. How do you understand what somebody's been going through? How do you develop empathy? And it's very difficult when you can't put yourself in their shoes, or you've got nothing to relate to their experiences. And quite honestly, I think mental health within the UK and within extreme sports, full stop, is probably the biggest challenge that we face. And coach education, as well as athlete education, is probably the most important thing we can do right now in order to ensure that athletes are given the best possible support and the best possible opportunities to succeed.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's incredible that you've done what you've done, and you've had the experiences you've had, and I think it does take a lot of discomfort to challenge you to become a better person, or to put yourself in a mindset where you think, whatever reason, enough's enough now. Things have got to change. I think just that's very strongly linked to mental health, not just in sport, but just in life really as well. I think making sure you have clarity and support from people around you, it directly kind of equals happiness in a way, and it is an area which is massively undervalued or understood, I think. So just moving on, Si, would you say you had many kind of key figures over the time period you've just described, or key influencers who've helped you with certain things?
Yeah. I mean, all the way through. I suppose when I think about who my influences, who's supported me, who's given me the knowledge and the insight to better help me do my job and support my athletes in a sport that is relatively small and a sport where there is very little guidance out there in terms of there's no books written on snowboard cross. There's no guidebooks or courses you can go on. So it's quite a small world. So where my influences, I guess a lot of my influences come from the books I read, the courses I do. I'm a massive fan of lifelong education. So I'm always got my head stuck in something. Right now, I've just started a new master's in performance coaching, just because it's just something more to do, something more to learn. But individuals, I guess not one particular person has really guided me, rather than many people have, and I've taken from individuals almost what I need in that time. So it might be a good friend of mine, Nick Jones, who's a strength and conditioning coach. Incredible coach, very, very good. And very, very insightful and a lot of knowledge. And so if I've got any strength fitness questions, I'll go to him and say, mate, what do you think about this? And he's always very honest and open and gives some really good advice. Or it might be the team is supported by the Scottish Institute of Sport, so you've got an incredible pool of knowledge within those guys. So if I've got any issues, injuries or how do I achieve this particular performance aspect when it's a physical component or a biomechanical issue, and I can go to those guys and they will give me what I need. Well, and likewise, my performance directors and fellow coaches, I will go to them and say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? So I guess I wouldn't put it down on one individual or one particular book, but many, and I will just go to whichever source I need at the time, based on the need.
It's nice to have a team of people around you that you can rely on and approach at any time. And I think even if you're working on an individual basis or in an individual sport, like it's a little bit harder because you spend a lot more time by yourself. But it is always great to ask questions. It's definitely something I found that has made me a better coach myself with what I do. Is just not being afraid to ask people for help. Because even though my younger me thought I knew it all, but then I quickly realised I didn't really know much at all.
So the more you learn, the more you realise you know nothing.
Correct. So I think, great advice there. Would you ever say, Si, would you have ever said that you got to a point where you actually didn't know the answer to something and you needed to find out specific information or specific detail about how to solve a problem or make something better? And where would you go to resource that information?
I think you basically summed up exactly how I feel most days.
Yeah.
I think every day I get a question or an issue that I've got. I look at puzzled and go, right, well, what is the answer here? And I think ultimately every day you're just trying to do your best. You just use the experience to try to feed your to feed your response. I think to be able to ask that question, first of all, requires a lot of ability from a coach to reflect. I think this is probably the most important thing a coach can do, is to reflect on performance, reflect on behaviour, and to actually ask themselves the question, have I done the best job I can do? Can I do things differently? If I did things differently, would I achieve a different outcome? What outcome do I want? And often knowing the outcome that you desire is the first question you need to ask. And there are many different ways that you can go down and discover this. And it might be analysis of your own coaching. You could use one of those observation tools, the Arizona State University, or whatever. But understanding exactly why you do what you do, how you do what you do, and having the confidence to change, knowing that you don't know it all. But also, if you keep doing what you doing what you do, you'll keep getting the results you've always got.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if you want a different result, then you need to question, actually, do you need to change what you're doing? And I love that saying. It really does sum things up. Trying to do the same thing the same way and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity, as we know. So I guess the first port of call would be just to identify what my issue is, and then choose somebody who I know has got a skill set in that area. So I've got sports psychologists at my disposal. I've got strength conditioning coaches. I've got other coaches who've got a lot of experience. And also trusting Google.
Yeah.
Interesting enough, actually, you can type it in, and there's a plethora of work out there.
Yeah.
But interesting. But what I'm also fascinated at the moment is there's a lot of books that I get recommended all the time, and I often read one of these books on performance coaching, or it might be a biography. Andre Agassi's is very good, or Legacy about the All Blacks, and I'll pick little ideas from there, or it will talk about something that puts something in my coaching realm into perspective. I can turn around and say, oh, well, those guys did this. They experienced that. I'm experiencing this, so maybe I should do that. and it's great. So I guess it's all about just trying to be open-minded and honest with yourself.
I think you can only develop as a person and a coach once you are honest with yourself, and I think that's harder to do when you're younger, for many reasons. But I've definitely found that I've become a better coach the older I've got, mainly because I'm running out of mistakes to make, but also just because I'm not scared to say I don't know the answer, or I'm not sure. I'll ask for help, like we mentioned earlier, and it's great, but it's not really a mindset I had when I was just starting out. So, last few questions, Si. Obviously, you've been around a lot of different athletes. You've been on a lot of different slopes over a long period of time. As this is a predominantly a sports science podcast, a lot of the listeners are interested into kind of the meat and potatoes of what are the top 3 sports performance exercises, drills, routines that you would say you've had most success with in order to produce or become a better snowboarder?
I think first things first is appropriate physical conditioning to ensure that you're resilient to injury and robust enough to do the sport. And what this looks like would be ensuring appropriate program off snow, an appropriate strength program. That includes mobilization, because mobility is probably one of the key attributes. I think setting the right behaviors, ensuring that the athletes actually understand the context of what you're doing and why you're doing it. It's all well and good that having a control environment where you're telling athletes do this, do that, but for them to actually buy into the idea of understanding why they need to mobilize, why they need to do strength training in the off season, I think that's probably one of the key attributes of a successful athlete. I think focus on the basics. One of the things I find time and time again is that it's very easy to see the big stuff, the exciting stuff, and just go and go jump in the big courses and go jump on the big kickers, and before an athlete really has the fundamental basics of how to do the sport. And this ties into just basic safety, being able to snowboard safely at speed, but also just understanding how the board behaves. These fundamental elements which can easily get skipped over. And I've seen time and time again where people who don't have these fundamental elements have been snowboarding for years, but they have never really focused on their own riding. And just by looking at these little things, you can increase a person's performance exponentially. I mean, I talk to a lot of World Cup coaches when we're training at competitions, and I say to them, it's like, well, for example, Pierre Vautier, who's twice double Olympic champion, said to his coach, it's like, well, how do you make the best in the world better? He said, well, you just focus on the basics. You just get them doing the same thing, but get them doing it slightly better each time. They can always be better. Nobody is the best they can be. I think that's really, really good advice for anyone. Silence as a coach. I think silence speaks for itself. I find a lot of coaches who love the sound of their own voice. They love to talk.
I know a few of those.
And you see this glazed look pass over the athlete's eyes. And you can tell they're not taking in any of the information, because all that's happening is the coach is waffling. And they might pick up one thing, two things. And I don't know if you come across John Wooden, basketball coach from moons ago, considered a master coach in what he does. And he was fantastic. He was very much of the mindset that shotgun style coaching feedback, just short and pithy, to the point. Say what they need to say, and then finish there. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things I brought into my own coaching, because I was terrible. I would waffle, and then I'd say the same things about 3 or 4 different ways, thinking that actually by saying it slightly differently, that person might understand me a little bit better. I'm thinking of the acronym VAC, visual, audio, kinesthetic. I'm trying to get it all in there, and I just made it really complicated. I just made it really, really complicated for them. And they were like, honestly, the feedback from the athletes was, Si, you just talk too much. But they'd say it in a jokey way, and it didn't really sink in until recently. And yet, as soon as I shut up, as soon as I was more measured in the feedback I was giving, I saw an increase in engagement and performance. What else?
I'll tell you what, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, because what you've said there is brilliant, and I completely agree with you. A lot of the best athletes I've worked with do the simple things really, really well, but they do them really, really well, really consistently, and that just adds up to great performances. My follow-up question was going to be, in terms of having a hard day on the slopes or being at a big training camp when athletes are very fatigued and very tired, what would you say the best recovery strategies or recovery methods are you've come across or maybe used yourself?
This is a thing very close to my heart. Recovery, probably the most important thing an athlete can do. The thing that probably most athletes do very badly. And so first of all, I think there's a few different elements here. So you've had a big day on a mountain. The first question is exactly which mountain. Now, if you're in the Saas-Fee, for example, in Switzerland, the top of the lift is 3,500 meters. And the training lifts go up to 3.8, 3.9. So already you've got an element of additional fatigue on the body through the increased altitude. Mm-hmm. You've then got the loading throughout the day. So you might do 2 hours on the snow, and the RPE, the rate of perceived exertion, might be up near 8, 9, depending on whether it's your first day on the slope, second day, or even your 5th day on the slope. So then you've got to look at what's come before, what have they done before, what have you got ahead. And also you've got to know the individual, the athlete. So what I really love is I love all these systems to be able to measure the loading throughout the day using the RPE score and the time training, because then you can get a ballpark figure. But ultimately, nothing is as good as just looking at the athlete, knowing the athlete, and just saying, hey, how are you doing today? So you've got to get a measure of, first of all, what the fatigue is. Is it relative fatigue? Is it acute, chronic? Is it, what kind of time frame are you measuring this fatigue over? Is it just because they finish a session and they're still blowing out the hoop, or is it actually they're down the bottom of the mountain, they're absolutely shattered, they're quiet because they're just tired in their own head? So actually, there's the physical fatigue, there's the cognitive fatigue, and there's just the fatigue over time. So understanding exactly what kind of loading and fatigue you're working with is key. But fundamentals of recovery don't really change. For me, number one is hydration. At altitude, hydration is key. You need to drink a hell of a lot more water when you're up at 3,500 meters than when you're out down at sea level training. So hydration is key. And that might consist of measuring that in athletes. Might consist of just doing morning osmos, just to test their hydration. Yeah. Secondly is sleep. I think there's a great statistic. Jan Lemur, I'm not sure if you come across him, but he's put some great infographics out, some great posters, and he showed a great one between the relationship of injury and number of hours sleep over 18 months for footballers, and the difference between 7 hours, 8 hours, and 9 hours. And the difference between 7 hours sleep and 8 hours sleep on recovery, I forget the number, but it was a significant increase in risk of injury over 18 months, just based on an hour different sleep. So sleep is key. So ensuring that the athletes are getting between 8 and 9 hours sleep. Nutrition. Are athletes eating enough? And are they eating enough of the right foods? Are they going and having burger and chips, or are they actually have they got a nice balanced diet based on their energy requirements?
Mm-hmm.
Are they eating appropriately throughout the day? Are they eating enough protein and all the other mix of carbs and fiber, etc., throughout the day? What I see most commonly in athletes is that they're not eating enough protein in order to support the repair and muscle maintenance of muscle throughout the day. I think ballpark figure, and depending on who you talk to and depending on the individual, it will vary. But let's say 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. If you're a 70 kilogram male, you're looking at 140 grams of protein a day, 30 grams per meal on average. So that's 90 grams. Yeah, 90 grams breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which leaves 50 grams that you've got to fit between meals and before you go to bed at night. Now, you ask most athletes whether they're eating that much, and I would argue that most of them are not. And therefore, how can you, when you're training extremely hard, expect to repair muscle if you're not eating enough for your body to have the building blocks to repair muscle? How can you maintain muscle if your body doesn't have the building blocks to maintain it? So nutrition is key. Other aspects to look at is lactate clearance. So as soon as we finish a physical recovery, a physical session, they'll jump on the spin bikes and just spin out their legs just to clear the lactate, just to help with getting that back into the bloodstream. Contrast baths is always very good. Or contrast showers. Again, it all comes down to accessibility. Now, when you're in the mountains and hotels, you very rarely have access to fancy contrast baths or cryo chambers or anything like this. So actually what you do have is glacial water.
Yeah.
And it's very, very, very cold.
Yeah,
incredibly cold. So if you're having a shower and starting a hot shower and then you put it to cold, when it's cold, it is really cold. It's really, really cold. And then a contrast shower is actually really nice for clearing out lactate again, and certainly I feel the benefits. Yeah. And one of the biggest tips I've come across is key to recovery is, in summary, if you're standing and you can sit, then sit. If you're sitting, you can lie, then lie. If you're lying and you can sleep, then sleep.
Fantastic.
And that's pretty much sums it up.
Love it. I felt like that a few times these last few weeks. I probably shouldn't have, but yeah, it's been a busy month. Brilliant site. Really, really appreciate those insights. I'm sure the listeners are going to take a lot from that. It's fantastic. Last couple of questions then. So we've discussed a lot of really cool things. I've learned a lot from you just having this chat. If people wanted to contact you and maybe follow up on some of these things or start a conversation, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
The best bet is through Instagram at Coach Nicholson, Nicolson. I'm always on Instagram. It seems to be the main outlet for most people in my industry. But likewise, if you can go through the British Ski and Snowboard website and find my details through there, or just contact them by telephone. But that's probably the best way.
Awesome. And finally, then, what have you got coming up? What's the rest of the year or the beginning of next year got in store for you?
Well, we've got a busy one coming up. So we're in a week's time, we're off to Holland. So we've got an indoor competition in Landgraf and bank slalom. So that'll be really good. So we've got a couple of European Cup and a couple of World Cups. And then we fly to Finland, up to a place called Rovaniemi and Puha. So Rovaniemi and Puha are within the Arctic Circle. And very, very cold. It'll be about -30 every day there. About 3 to 4 hours of sunshine every day. So we're going to be popping our vitamin D tablets just to ensure that we're on a level and we don't start getting cabin fever. But we've got a couple of snowboard cross races there. And then we're flying to Colorado, where we've got the Dew Tour. So bank slalom again, and that'd be fantastic. It'd be a really good opportunity just to mix it with some of the big boys from the other rest of the snowboard community, and that's able-bodied freestyle as well. So as you know, Q-Tour is a huge competition. And then into Christmas, and then next year we've got a lot of able-bodied competitions. So I'm going to be pitting my athletes against some able-bodied guys, which can be really interesting. Just to push them, just to give them a little bit of more competition experience. And we've also got World Champs coming up again in Finland. So that's a big event for these guys in order to measure against the UK sport criteria for funding. So we are UK sport funded. So there is quite a lot of hoops that these athletes need to jump through, including major competitions such as World Champs, in order to get support from them.
Well, best of luck, Si. It sounds like you've got a lot on, and it sounds very busy. It sounds extremely exciting. I'm incredibly jealous because I think it's probably been about over a year ago since I've even strapped my board on. So much overdue a visit to the slopes myself. Just want to finish by saying, look, great to catch up with you. Really appreciate your time. Thanks very much, and look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Yeah, likewise, Ryan. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for listening to the 10th episode. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please don't hesitate to leave us a rating or review on your listening platform of choice. If you haven't already, please check out our website. We have weekly blogs on our blog page. You can sign up to our monthly newsletter via our sign up page. Our online store consists of personal coach, training programs, nutrition plans, interactive training systems, toolbox, and coming very soon, membership packages. We also have several social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Links to all these can be found at the bottom of every page on our website or via any search engine. That's all for now. Until next time, take care.